I chose to do my final exam on Vincent van Gogh. I chose to do it on him because he's always been my favorite artist because he painted The Starry Night, and that's my favorite painting. We also have a mutual love for sunflowers, and although he's famous for painting The Starry Night, he's created over 2,000 works of art ranging from paintings to sketches. What makes Vincent van Gogh's art different is the emotional power of space, the symbolic interpretation of color, and the disposition of the medium, and the creative intelligence and sheer beauty of his work. Vincent van Gogh is perhaps the most famous artist of all time. He's often perceived as an insane person who painted in a frenzy and a lost soul who cut off his own ear. Although some of that is true, many people admire his uniqueness and innovative art style. Even when he was openly influenced by other artists, his works were identifiably his own. His style was enormously important to the thousands of artists he inspired and continue to inspire to this day. Van Gogh Van Gogh has been called a martyr because he devoted his tormented life to art, a washout because he only sold one painting in his life and ended up committing suicide, insane because he spent his final years in an asylum, and a success because of all the money his paintings have made after his death. The majority of Van Gogh's paintings were created in the post-impressionism period. The peak period of that was the 1880s. The main artists were Van Gogh and Paul Cézanne from 1839 to 1906, and located in Aix-en-Provence, France. Subjects were the idealized life within nature. The painting characteristics was the expressive subjective reality, taking elements from traditional things to representational painting and line, perspective, color, and etc. So what happened during Van Gogh's time? The economic changes was the switch from agricultural to the industrial economy. There was a population relocation. People were moving from farms to cities where there were more jobs. There was new transportation. A large quantity of people traveled by train. There was a walking. Once in cities, people yearned for contact with nature. There was a mass change in mood. People experienced extreme loneliness, alienation, and felt invisible to the rest of the world within the crowded cities, and they gained a new visual perspective. The world looks different from atop the Eiffel Tower, the basket of a hot air balloon, or the seat of a train. Many of these events impacted Van Gogh's work. Many of his paintings were somber and lonely, much like the people. His landscapes and floral paintings showed the connection with nature, and he showed us different perspectives by painting the same landscape over and over but changing the time of day he painted it. He also gave us a more abstract perspective by depicting things the way they made him feel and not necessarily the way they looked. Vincent van Gogh was born on March 30th in 1853 to Reverend Theodorus van Gogh and Anna Cornelius Combertus. He was born in Groot Zundert in North Brabant, Holland, near the Belgian border. He had a younger brother named Theo van Gogh who would become his closest friend and lifelong pen pal. Vincent van Gogh wasn't the first or last Vincent van Gogh. There was grandfather Vincent, who was the highly respected Protestant minister and scholar, Uncle Vincent, who was the art dealer with the European firm Goupil and Company, baby brother Vincent, who was stillborn and was born exactly a year before. Vincent van Gogh didn't start out as an artist. He followed his grandpa's footsteps and became an art dealer when he was just 16 years old. He became an employee at the Paris-based Goupil & Co. at its branch in Hague. He was a promising junior partner and was promoted to the London office in May of 1873. There he visited museums, read, and observed nature until he was ultimately fired in 1875. But not before he learned firsthand about art and began to develop his own style. During this time, he also began his letter correspondence with his younger brother Theo. During this time, he also began his letter correspondence with his younger brother Theo. Gogh began writing his letters to Theo in the August of 1872 and continued throughout his whole life. He also wrote to other artists such as Emile Bernard and Paul Gauguin. Van Gogh's letters to Theo were one of the most thorough collections and moving stories of an artist's journey. His letters cataloged what he was doing, who he met, what he read, painted, drew. He often included sketches he was working on or information about the painting, such as how long they took him or what inspired each one. Van Gogh's early art. Van Gogh was largely self-taught and believed he must first master black and white before he could use color. He first concentrated on sketches or rudimentary drawings until 1882, when he moved out of his parents' house in Eton to Hague, where he got some formal training from his cousin Anton Mauve, a leading Hague artist. That same year, he began his first independent work with watercolors and then later ventured to oil paintings. He also got his first real earnings as an artist when his uncles commissioned 2 pieces from him. Important art from Van Gogh's life: The Potato Eaters in 1885, The Courtesan of 1887, Cafe Terrace at Night of 1888, and The Starry Night of 1889. The Potato Eaters was known as Van Gogh's first masterpiece. It was an oil-on canvas that was painted in 1885 in Nuenen, Netherlands. While living among peasants in the Netherlands, he wanted to depict the people and their lives truthfully. He used muted color palette so he can mimic the terrible living conditions of the time. The effect is heightened with the loose brushstrokes to describe the peasants as they gather around the table to eat their meager meal of potatoes. This painting, much like many others, was regarded as a failure until his death. Print in Paris Illustré. While in Paris, Van Gogh was exposed to countless new artist styles, including Japanese Uko woodblocking. He collected many of these Japanese works of art which he held in the highest regard. Gogh was inspired to make this piece after seeing a reproduction of the print created by Kizun Izin that appeared on the May 1886 cover of the Paris Illustré. He enlarged Izin's Corizon and placed her on a gold background with lush lilies. The pond is inhabited by cranes and frogs, both French symbols for prostitutes. Van Gogh made this piece his own by painting it instead of using wood blocks. He was able to soften the piece by relying on the visible brushstrokes to create the dimension not seen in the original print. The Cafe Terrace at Night was one of Van Gogh's first paintings he created in Arles, and the very first piece that he featured a nocturnal background. By using contrasting colors, Gogh was able to create a vibrance of the piece that almost defied the darkness around it. The cafe the painting is modeled after still stands today and is a massive tourist attraction to Van Gogh fans. Van Gogh wrote in a letter to his sister, "Here you have the night painting without black, but with nothing but beautiful blue and violet green, and in this surrounding, the illuminated area colors itself sulfur pale yellow and citron green. It amuses me enormously to paint the night right on the spot." You can see his excitement for the painting in the brushstroke. Van Gogh's most known work is The Starry Night. More than likely you've heard of it, not because it's Van Gogh's most notable work, but also because it's the most recognized painting of all time. His motivation behind creating The Starry Night was he wanted to create a nocturne during the night instead of the day from memory. He created this while staying in the mental asylum at St. Remy. Made this piece influential was it was the first nocturne to be painted at night and one of the first paintings created to show the artist's feelings while painting instead of just painting what they saw. This painting and many others continue to influence artists to this very day. This painting is still very relevant and popular and held in the highest regard. The Starry Night is a nocturne or night picture of the village mountain and cypress trees beneath the crescent moon in the star-studded sky. The artist couldn't see the mountains from the window, and the church steeple didn't match the ones in Provence, rather than the Netherlands. Therefore, the Starry Night was created not only from the reality, but also from memories and imagination. For Van Gogh, it was a willful act of freedom, spiritual, personal, symbolic, abstract, and interpretive liberation achieved through art. The point was, some critics suspect that Van Gogh was depicting himself as a bright star as the promotion of death and the connection to the heavens because people believed that when someone died, their soul became a star. Three fun facts about the Starry Night. 1. Van Gogh painted the Starry Night from his room in a mental asylum at St. Remy, where he was recovering from his ear amputation and mental illness. 2. The artist considered the painting to be a failure, according to the letters he wrote to his brother. And 3. Pathologist Paul Wolfe believes that Van Gogh's obsession with yellow in his paintings was a side effect from taking too much digitalis, a treatment in his day for epilepsy. After Van Gogh left St. Remy de Provence, the asylum he was staying at, he continued to work and paint. He created roughly a painting a day, but he thought he was a failure and a waste of time because no one seemed to appreciate his work. Van Gogh tried to commit suicide by shooting himself. He failed but died shortly after from the wound. He died on July 27th in 1890 at age 37. Although Van Gogh was not considered successful during his own life, he is now one of the most known and beloved artists of all time.